Hello everyone. Today I will recap the movie Peter Rabbit Part 2, The Runaway. Continuing Part 1 is the fairy tale wedding of Bee and farmer Thomas McGregor. The beautiful bride Bee was led into the wedding hall by 3 rabbits, witnessed by both families and cute neighbor animals. Among them, the rabbit in the blue shirt is Peter, the leader of the rabbits and also Thomas's enemy in Part 1. Peter he rushed in and punched Thomas a few times, then kicked him in the face. Thomas was kicked hard by Peter and fell into a pile of balloons. Then he was caught in the balloons and flew up into the sky. Luckily, the call from another rabbit woke Peter up. It turned out that everything was just in Peter's imagination. Peter then flusteredly gave the ring to Thomas, who in turn gave Bee the engagement ring. The two kissed passionately. After the honeymoon, Thomas and Bee come back to their bookstore. In the bookstore, a boy recognized Peter as the rabbit in the book, which made Peter very proud. However, the boy only saw Peter as a naughty rabbit. Meanwhile, Bee was always proud to say that the rabbits were her family. Just then, there was a letter outside the shop. Peter decided to play the old game of who would win and go out to get the letter. Of course, Peter always won. When Peter excitedly ran to the door, he met Johnny the mouse, and Johnny would show Peter his collection of 15 cute little mice. While talking with Johnny, Peter accidentally knocked over the sign and broke the glass. Thomas thought Peter was being mischievous again, but Bee insisted that it was just an accident and asked Thomas to apologize to Peter. After reading the letter, Bee was very happy because it was from Nigel Basil Jones, a famous publisher. The next day, Thomas and Bee with the rabbits returned to their house in the countryside. While sitting in the car, Peter jumped up to pick an apple, but unfortunately, it was a rotten apple, so the other rabbits did not eat it. When they returned to the rabbits rushed into the orchard, with all kinds of fruits such as strawberries, pumpkins and corn. Meanwhile, Thomas's part only had a tomato plant. Pig and Hedgehog also came to play. Peter was chased by Weasel, but after a while, Weasel remembered that he was a vegetarian. After the bunnies finished eating, Bee gave them water to drink. At the same time, Peter saw a piece of paper on the table blown down by the wind, so he helped Bee put it back. However, Thomas saw that action and thought that Peter was harassing, this thing making Peter feel sad. In front of Peter, there was a picture of him and his father, making him suddenly think that no one understood him like his father. When he looked out the window, Peter saw Tommy, the weasel, stealing Thomas's tomatoes. So Peter quickly ran out to stop Tommy, and asked Tommy to return the tomatoes he had picked. Later, Peter climbed up the tomato tree to put the tomatoes back, but unexpectedly Thomas saw the scene, and misunderstood that Peter was stealing his tomatoes. Thomas blamed Bee and scolded Peter loudly, although Bee tried to reconcile, but this still made Peter very sad. The next day, Bee's whole family received VIP train tickets from Nigel. On board, the rabbit Cottontail couldn't take his eyes off a colorful bowl of candies, while the twin rabbits, Flopsy and Mopsy, excitedly looked out the window to watch the scenery pass by. However, Flopsy and Mopsy were so excited that they got dizzy and fell to the ground. Later, Cottontail quickly felt dizzy from the sugar in the candy, jumped on the sofa, and even jumped out of the train, clung to the glass door, and claimed to be an immortal rabbit. When they arrived in the city, Cottontail was exhausted and fell to the ground like a deflated balloon. Upon arrival, Bee and Thomas were warmly welcomed by Nigel. He really liked Bee's work on her bunnies. After a small talks, they began to discuss their first job. Nigel offered to print 5,000 copies, and wanted to collaborate with Bee on the next books. Bee was excited and had already envisioned 23 more books in her head, which everyone thought was great. However, Cottontail felt that Nigel was unreliable. Then, Nigel began to describe the rabbits he would promote. Benjamin was the wise one, Cottontail was the impulsive one, and the twins Flopsy and Mopsy were the dynamic duo. Finally, there were 2 versions of Peter, one was naughty and one was evil. However, Bee disagreed with this. In her opinion, Peter was just a little naughty, not evil. At that time, Nigel took everyone to see a large billboard featuring Bee's rabbits. In the picture, Peter stood alone with a villainous look, and Peter was shocked to see that Bee had agreed to participate in this project. Sad, Peter left and wandered down the street. He was splashed with water and bumped into a briefcase, very painful. In a moment of extreme fatigue, he stepped on a pile of mortar on the road. Sadness piled up, Peter dragged himself, then he fell flat on his face. After walking a distance, Peter meets another rabbit, named Barnabas. When Barnabas saw Peter, he thought he was someone's pet, but Peter admitted that he was a bad guy. Barnabas suggested that Peter try to steal an apple. Although he hesitated, but Peter still punched the stall, causing apples to fall like rain. and they were immediately discovered by the shop owner. Barnabas quickly ran to at the mailbox. Seeing this, Peter jumped in too. Inside, Barnabas asks Peter where he came from, since his friend also has a shirt like Peter. Peter replied that it was left to him by his father. At this moment, the mailman arrives, and Barnabas and Peter take advantage of the moment when he opens the mailbox door to dash out and jump into the sorting bins. Barnabas reveals that his best friend is Peter's father. They later are quickly discovered, but Barnabas invites Peter to play a game. They poke their heads out of the trash bin doors, scaring the fruit stall owner and the mailman. However, while Peter is engrossed in watching Barnabas perform, Peter is hidden ahead, and both were grabbed by the ears and dragged up. Barnabas quickly throws a bottle at the mailman's face, then kicked the cork at the vendor's foot, just in time to rescue Peter. But as soon as they exit the alley, they are arrested. Meanwhile, Bea was signing a lot of papers, but she still reminded Nigel to keep it true to the original, not to turn it into a low-quality product just for profit. At this time, Barnabas and Peter were locked in a pet shop. Immediately, a little girl named Amelia recognized Peter as the rabbit in the book and bought him, and Barnabas was also chosen because they looked like father and son. As soon as Amelia returned home, the two rabbits, Barnabas and Peter, were pulled out of their cages by Amelia and her younger brother. After that, Barnabas and Peter went through long, tiring days. They were teased, then taken to the bathroom and dried with a hair dryer. They were even forced to take fashion photos, not even having a good sleep. Worst of all, they were forced to sit in a car and push down the stairs. Finally, when Amelia and her brother had to go out, they locked Barnabas and Peter in a cage. Taking advantage of the time when everyone was away, Barnabas removed the sign on the cage and used it as a tool to open the lock. Then Barnabas went into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator door. Barnabas told Peter to get the bag, and Peter did the same. And it was then that Peter realized that Barnabas had been deliberately captured to commit this theft. Barnabas and Peter quickly took everything they could eat. After a while, Barnabas and Peter had collected a lot of food, but the problem was how to carry it away. However, Barnabas said he had a professional delivery team consisting of a mouse named Whiskers and two cat sisters, Kitten and Mittens. Mittens went into the dressing room and took shirt and hat. Then, the group crowded inside to pretend to be a man. However, when they just reached the door, the landlady unexpectedly returned. When she opened the door, she screamed in horror when she saw them. The group wanted to run away, but Peter did not want to leave empty-handed, so they decided to implement another plan. Mittens will distract the owner, causing her to chase Mittens. When they reach the kitchen, Peter opens the refrigerator door, causing her to fall. Then he sprays alcohol in her face and uses a hair dryer to blow her hair all over. The owner chases after them, but stumbles on an obstacle and crashes into the door. Then, they disguises themselves with a cart and runs away. When they reach the tailor's shop, unfortunately, they crash into the wall and reveal their true colors. They quickly dumping all the fruit into the cellar. Finally, when the landlady caught up, she only picks up a shirt. In the cellar, everyone praises Peter for the spoils they have obtained. That evening, Barnabas takes Peter for a walk. He says that Thomas has taken away everyone's peaceful days. At this time, Thomas and Bea also appear. Seeing Peter safe, everyone breathes a sigh of relief and returns home. However, unlike usual, while the other four rabbits huddle together and sleep together, Peter sits alone. In the morning, Bea and Thomas went for a walk with the rabbits in the meadow. Benjamin asked Peter if he had encountered anything the day before. Peter simply replied that he had found someone who could change his life. As he watched the rabbits playing in the grass, Thomas suddenly remembered his childhood. In the orphanage, he did not have the opportunity to play like that, so he really wanted to have a child to bring joy to the family, and Peter heard that. However, Peter told the rabbits that when Bea and Thomas had a baby, they would be kicked out of the house. Therefore, Peter invited the rabbits to the city. The rabbits hitchhiked on a train, and then on a taxi. Finally, they found Barnabas's basement. However, Barnabas felt his robbery was too dangerous, so he did not let them join. Peter tried to convince Barnabas because they had stolen things before. Then the rabbits pull off a trick and steal Barnabas' glasses. So, Barnabas reluctantly lets them join. On the other side, Nigel has arrived to Bea and Thomas's shop to tell them that the first book has received positive reviews. Bea is delighted and wants to share new ideas with Nigel. However, Nigel suggests that she change the style, such as drawing rabbits on the beach or in outer space. Thomas thinks that those ideas might not be suitable, but Nigel insists that it is what the readers want. Down in the basement, Barnabas begins to make plans. Whiskers takes out the map he has drawn. At certain times, When farmers bring fresh fruits and vegetables to an area called the farmer's market, where there are no doors or barriers, they will pass the coconut water and wooden furniture stalls before reaching the dried fruit stall, which is their target. The rabbits didn't understand why they were stealing dry goods, so Mittens let them try some dried fruit. They all found it delicious, easy to carry, and kept for a long time. However, the dried fruit stall was in the middle of the market and was difficult to steal. The Farmers Association often helped each other to look after the stall. They were like a formidable army, especially the dried fruit stall owner, Sarah. She was very observant and always watched her stall. However, everyone had a weakness, and Sarah's weakness was the boy at the opposite stall, William. So their job was to distract Sarah, then move barrels of dried fruit onto the car of the neighbor Taylor, who often came to the farmer's market every week. However, their plan needed more people. So Peter went back to ask his friends at the farm to join. Everyone was excited, but when they got to the deer, they were confused. Peter thought for a moment, and then told the other rabbits to go back and get the flashlights. The 3 rabbits went home to get the flashlights, and to see Thomas bringing tomatoes for Bee to taste. Thomas also wanted to bring tomatoes to the farmer's market. By chance, Thomas saw Bee drawing a picture of rabbits on the beach. He realizes that Bee has been influenced too much by Nigel. He tried to remind Bee, but Bee completely ignored him. On this side, Peter shined the flashlights in Uncle Deer's eyes, and Deer immediately caught on and walked with everyone into the city. When they arrived, Peter was very proud of his billboard, and asserted that when the mission is successful, everyone would become famous. The next morning, Bee and Thomas held a book launch, attracting a large number of readers of all ages who loved Bee's work. During the ceremony, Nigel gave Bee a luxury car and praised her. However, Thomas did not agree with that opinion. He felt that Bee was going in the wrong direction, so he decided to go see Nigel. Thomas told Nigel that he was trying to force his ideas on Bee. Instead of listening, Nigel invited Thomas to a boxing match. Thomas fought with all his might, but he could not defeat Nigel. When the argument caught Nigel off guard, Thomas took the opportunity and knocked Nigel off the field. However, Nigel laughed and called Thomas selfish. The next day, Bee returned home and blamed Thomas. She had worked hard to achieve success, but he did not support her and wanted to hinder her. Thomas sadly said that Bee had changed. But Bee was completely asleep in victory, and she believed that only Nigel understood her. Finally, the plan to rob the farmer's market began. Benjamin felt very anxious and urged Peter to think twice, but Peter ignored his advice. When Mittens gave the signal, they slid down the roof one by one. Benjamin chose to hide behind a potted plant. Tommy decided to cover his ears and walk past the band, while the duck carried the no animals sign. The green frog removed the no animals sign so that the animals could move out. Then Peter and Barnabas poured oil on the road, causing a farmer to fall, and they immediately dragged him inside. The rabbit sisters, Flopsy and Mopsy, pulled the scale down and let it go, causing it to fly into the salesgirl's face. Meanwhile, the hedgehog and the frog blew chili powder together to make the sales guy dizzy. Then the frog jumped on his face and made him fall down. At the same time, Cottontail, while on his duty, saw a colorful candy jar and was very happy, but because he ate too much sweet candy, he was drunk and fainted. Pig and Tommy decided to act more directly. One sat on the cart, the other pushed. They used brooms to push everyone down. At the same time, the 2 cat sisters, Kitten and Mittens, were waiting for the tailor to come and sneaked into his cart. Benjamin, as planned, led the deer to Sarah's counter, but Benjamin forgot how to tie the rope that Peter had taught him, so he tied the rope in a mess. The 2 rabbits, Peter and Barnabas, jumped up and knocked over a pile of wooden cutting board, causing William to fall to the ground. As expected, Sarah ran over to help him, but a wooden cutting board rolled towards Thomas and injured his leg. Seeing the jam and tomatoes he had worked so hard to get, now falling to the ground, he was extremely heartbroken. When he turned around, he suddenly saw Peter. Next, Tommy hit the deers, but causing it to drag the dried fruit stand away. Peter had no other choice, but after a moment of hesitation, Peter decided to run after Barnabas. Everyone ran into the animal enclosure to hide. Meanwhile, the deer had loaded the tailor's cart with fruit. When everyone was about to go out, Whisker suddenly locked the door, locking everyone in. It turned out that this was their plan from the beginning. Peter sat in the cart, wondering about his brothers. When he looked out, Peter saw that everyone was being taken away. Thomas had also just arrived, not understanding what was going on. He saw Peter in a strange car and wanted to chase after Peter, but he couldn't catch up. When he turned back, he saw that the pet shop car had taken her to Pets Away. At this time, Barnabas's group were not afraid to reveal their true colors. Actually, Barnabas did not know Peter's father. He was just too old to be adopted, so he used that time to read books. Barnabas realized that Peter was the rabbit in the book, so he followed the plot and tricked Peter. But after seeing Peter's potential, Barnabas wanted to recruit Peter into his team, and that was why they let him get in the car. Peter regretted it so much, he kicked the car door open and jumped out. Bee also happened to run by, but her could not see Peter. Peter then rushed to the pet store, but Peter saw his menagerie of pets adopted by new owners. At this time, Thomas also chased to the pet store. Thomas went to ask the staff for information about the adopter, but the person did not want to talk. So Thomas snatched the paper from the person's hand and ran into the car. Who would have thought that it was just a grocery list, so he had to go back there, spending all his little money to buy information. On the way, he realized that Peter could talk, even though Peter denied it, saying that he was hallucinating. The car had not gone far when it ran out of gas. Thomas and Peter struggled to push the car the whole way long. During that time, Peter asked why Thomas helped him. Thomas answered because it was a matter of course. Peter had to bow his head and admit his mistake, thinking that he was stupid, believing lies from strangers. Thomas rarely did not criticize Peter. He even admitted that he was too strict, also because he had never been a father. At this moment, their car slid back to its original position. Thomas shouted in despair and chased after it. Meanwhile, at the meeting for BA's new book collection, everyone did not agree with the happy ending that B drew for the rabbits. They needed something more dramatic, for example, a kidnapping of the rabbits. B and Thomas had to travel all over the world to rescue their pets. Absolutely no one listened to BA's opinion. At this moment, Thomas and Peter rushed in. Nigel immediately took a jar and put it on Peter's head to illustrate his space rabbit project. B couldn't stand it and won Peter back. At this time, Thomas said that herd of pets had been captured. B realized that she was wrong. She declared that there would be no more skiing or space rabbits. Nigel saw that he was about to lose a big deal, so he tried to persuade B, wanting to gain her sympathy, but she flatly refused and left with Peter. The first level was very easy to save the duck, then they to a rich family and stole the hedgehog. But when it comes to saving Benjamin, they start to run into trouble. The old fisherman was about to cook Benjamin. B and Thomas negotiated, but he didn't let Benjamin go, so they had to get on the boat to chase after him. B threw the anchor rope to the other ship for Peter to climb over. Peter kept apologizing and opened the cage for Benjamin. Then, Peter and Benjamin put the buoy on the engine and glide away on the sea. Next, the B family went to a restaurant. They let the duck fly in, the frog in the glass cage, grabbed the rope on the duck, and both flew out. Then they went to another place. Thomas almost cried when he saw a deer head hanging on the wall, but it was not their deer. Then, they saw their real deer and calmly led it away. On this side, Tommy went to the snowy mountains. B and Thomas chased after him and distracted him, so that Peter and Benjamin could get in below and save Tommy. Next, somehow, Thomas broke into the plane and saved the twin rabbits, Flopsy Mopsy. They all jumped on Thomas's back and parachuted down. B drove below to catch Thomas, but the parachute got caught on the deer and sent it flying into the sky. Next, everyone went to a restaurant. Peter used the trick he learned from Barnabas to jump into the door to free the pig that was about to become a mummy. The chef immediately got on his motorbike and chased after him. B drove elegantly, dodging left and right. Seeing that he was about to come, the hedgehog volunteered to smash the car lights, bit the small electric wire, causing himself to be shocked, and shot dozens of quills at him. After that, the A's rabbit group came up with another plan to break into Barnabas's basement to steal the dried fruit. As Peter was moving the last crate of dried fruit out, he encountered Barnabas' group. Barnabas thought he had grasped Peter's weakness, but Peter said that thanks to them, he learned many things. 1. The tailor would be out today, and 2. How to tie the rope tightly. Barnabas was terrified. Mittens, Kitten, and Whiskers had been tied by the rabbits. Barnabas was no exception. The end of the rope was tied to the tailor's car. He drives and dragged them all along. They had no choice but to climb into the car, and before they could plan their revenge, the pet store caught them all. On this side, the BA's whole family took the crates of dried fruit back to Sarah. B and Thomas have also understood each other better. B realized that family was the most important thing to her. Behind the car, Peter also sincerely apologized to everyone, especially Benjamin, because he had always ignored Benjamin's teachings. Benjamin pretended to tease Peter, but then laughed and accepted Peter's apology. After that, they lived happily ever after. B and Thomas has her first baby. The rabbits love the baby like their own brother. Cottontail even wants to share her candy with the baby, and Bee has already released sequels to Peter Rabbit.